Hello, reality searchers, and welcome to the show. We have another fine episode for you guys. We have today author of Wish You Were Here, a rock fantasy, and the soon to be released author of We're Here, Heavenly Encounters, a rock fantasy book 2. A fascinating story inspired by the rock band Badfinger. The books are cast as fiction, but I think there is much more to the story than that. We will soon get into this. Badfinger was a well-known rock band for Wales. They produced music from 1961 to 1984. The band had sold over 14 million albums, and their sound has been compared to the Beatles, if people don't know or haven't heard their music. Some experts say they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The band did have its share of hardships with management discrepancies and band member disputes. Also, two of the band members actually committing suicide. That was Pete Ham in 1975 at age 27 and Tom Evans in 1983 at age 36. So today with me, I have Joyce Isaacson. I'd like to welcome her to the show. How you doing, Joyce?
I'm doing okay.
It's nice to finally have you on the show. We've been talking back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
How are things up in your area where you're from? What your part of the world? How are things with the whole, 2020 situation? I always like to start the show off with that, see how guests are doing.
Well, I have been sort of a homebody lately. Very creative though. I've also haven't been in a store in since March. I have some conditions, and so I just do not want to go out. I go outside sometimes and I walk back and forth, and when I see somebody coming, like the Monty Python thing, I say, run away, run away. I run away from people, and it's so sad that I have to do that.
Yeah,
My husband works on the outside, and I have to distance myself even from my husband right now because of this.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Hey, but
Well, I guess
I'm not alone.
before we jump into a little bit about your book and kind of what inspired that, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what your background's in.
Well, let's see. I grew up very poor. Um, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment for 17 years of my life. And my father, he put together some kind of thing in the sunroom to make a bedroom. So there was 2 bedrooms, and my brother actually slept in the living room, if you can believe that. We didn't have any central heating or anything like that. It was just a very hard life that I lived. And I worked at the Chicago Tribune at a very early age. I started at 17 years old, and it's a weird story, but I had somebody who was working there already, and it's like a big sister, little sister thing, and I kept thinking to myself when I went there for a tour, and I saw what the copy clerks were doing, I said, oh, this is something I want to do. I never thought it would happen, actually. And I was working at the time at a cleaner's, and I needed to go to a wedding, and the cleaner's person said, okay, your job is secure, and when you come back, you'll work. I went to the wedding, came back, and they said, sorry, we had to hire new people. I'm like, okay. So I was a little depressed about it, but then I thought, hey, I'm going to go down to the Chicago Tribune. I'm going to fill an application and see what happens. I went down. 3 days later, they called me and said, come on down, you're hired. So it was a very interesting, so this is my journey. Being involved with people in journalism, people being involved in graphic design. I was always loved art ever since I was a kid, and I've always liked writing. And we had when I was about 8 years old, our whole school had to take, I guess we had a poetry contest, and we all had to participate in it. And I went ahead and I just wrote about the seasons, and I won. And And that really kicked off my writing career, honestly. And from that point on, I started writing and drawing, and I would make my own little comics. Um, and I was sort of a loner in a way. I didn't have many friends at the time. And I just do this with the comics. So that's sort of where everything happened for me. When I was at the Chicago Tribune, I met so many different people there, and I was inspired by some of the writers, actually. And I started to write. I don't know if you've ever heard of Quantum Leap.
Yes, I have.
Oh, yes. Quantum Leap. Um, I wrote a screenplay, and I also wrote a treatment for it. And I approached Rick Cogan from the Chicago Tribune, who I knew pretty much. And he said to me, Joyce, he says, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to be very honest with you. If I don't like it, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to be very harsh with you. I'm like, uh-oh. So that very night, after I gave it to him, I had dreams that he hated it. And I went in the next day and I was shaking in my shoes. And he was on the phone and I was like this, just shaking. And all of a sudden, got off the phone and said, Joyce, I'm going to be very, very honest with you. And I thought I was going to faint. I'm honestly going to faint. He said, I loved it. He said, it was great. He says, you should send it in to the Quantum Leap people. So I was going to do that, but I found out you need an agent to send it in. So I can't believe the phone's ringing back. I'm sorry about this. Hopefully it will stop. So I couldn't do it because it cost $2,000 to send in for an agent. So I was stuck, and I told Rick about it. Rick said, let me send it in. And he sent it with a note saying, when you see this and you read this, send me a note. And he's the TV critic, so everybody should listen to him. And so basically, we didn't hear anything from anybody. And he called them up and they said, oh, we looked at it and we didn't want it. So Rick came back to me and said they never saw it. They never read it. Because if they would have read it, they would have seen the note and they would have gotten back to me on it. So they just tossed it. That's
Oh,
it.
wow.
No agent, no nothing. But from there, it was just growing this urge to write. And even though I felt like, really frustrated about what happened, I just kept writing and drawing. And I was in a creative writing class as well when I was in Columbia College, because that's where I went to. And I was doing very well in it. And I got like A's and A pluses and everything, and it really sort of bolstered my ego, so to speak, that I got kind of cocky, and I decided to write something for my final project that I found out he wouldn't grade. He said it was too way out there, just too way out there. And at that time, I was seeing a soul at that time. I met a soul in 1979, and the soul was with me for a long time. He still comes here and there. And I had no proof that he actually existed in my life for a very long time. So there were times I thought I was going crazy because I didn't have any confirmation. But in 1984, he told me when I first met him, he said, Joyce, he says, I was murdered. And I'm like, oh, I said, well, okay, and I had a dream and he showed me how it happened. And then in 1984, this book came out on him, and this person saw the murder in the bushes, and he described everything the way I saw it. So I knew there was a connection going on from that point on. And then we found out in 1994 he was in fact murdered.
Wow.
It came out. So yeah. But when I started writing everything down, and I did write things, I actually started writing a soap opera called All My Rock Stars with my girlfriend. And we went back and forth on it together. I would write something down and she would write her dialogue down. And I had like books and books and books of these things. I think I had like 24 reporter notebooks of this. And my writing just, I don't know, it just flourished, I guess. And I finally decided to write, I don't know if you've ever heard of Nowhere Man, if you've heard of that one. I actually was very inspired by Nowhere Man, and I had a dream, and it was just there that I knew I could write something that inspired me by that. And I didn't write just one book. I wrote 6 different books with this character going from one place to another. And it's a science fiction book. And I was able to get a publisher online, and everything was fine with the publisher until they changed hands. And then things went sour. They went north or south or whatever. And they were nickeling and diming me for everything. And I wanted to get my rights back, and they said, you can't get your rights back unless you pay us $90. And my husband said, let them keep the book until they pay you. And they finally went belly up, and my book is stuck on Amazon, and there's nothing I can do right now. So that I was basically shafted with this publisher, and it was very, very sad and scary. And I do have trust issues about it because this happened to me, I guess. So I know how Badfinger feels. You know, they take your money and you get very little in return, and then there's nothing whatsoever. So I understand that.
That's interesting. So the book, Wish You Were Here. I was able to read quite a bit of it, like we had talked about. Actually, I read some of it last night. The story is a fascinating read to the point where you just kind of want to learn more about heaven and even about the character Thomas himself. But the thing about the book is many of the details in the book kind of made me believe that it was not a fiction that you were writing. There was a lot of similarities to things that I've learned about, the paranormal and from psychic mediums talking to spirit and stuff like that. So I guess the question is, so how did the inspiration for the story come to be?
That's a very interesting question. It actually started back in 2013. My husband, he had a little radio station called Sound of Good Tunes, and he asked me to put away some of the albums, and I came across a CD, and it had Joey Mullen on the cover and said Badfinger, and I said, well, I know Joey Mullen, and I said, but I don't know the other ones here. And I took it downstairs, and I opened it up, and there were like liner notes, and they told a tiny tidbit about each one of them, like not much. And I decided to put it on my CD player, and I played it, and out came the song called Rock of All Ages, and I just freaked with it. I thought it was like a Beatles song. I'm like, whoa, and it sounds like Paul McCartney, in there. And from that point on, my husband had maybe a Facebook page, I think in 2008, I ignored it. I didn't want to go on Facebook at all. And that time, I was very much into Zeppelin. I was a Zeppelin person. I love the Beatles, don't get me wrong, love the Beatles, I like Zeppelin.
Yeah,
And
Beatles are
I
great.
wanted to join a Zeppelin group. And I joined the group, and I also joined Joey Mullen's group because it was on there. And then from there, I said, can I join a Badfinger group? And my husband said, sure, why not? So I joined this Badfinger group, and I found out everybody was actually hurting in the Badfinger group. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then I find out that 2 of the members had passed away. and it was really sad how they passed away. And so I'm like, okay, I'm in this group, um, and all of a sudden, see, I also meditate as well. And mm, I think it was a couple of weeks later, I was just sitting on my couch meditating, and I finished my meditation, and I had a vision. I couldn't believe I had a vision, but I had a vision. I put a spread down, a table, a spiritual table, food like scouse, pizza. Let's see, I had milk and sugar cubes. And I put it down, and all of a sudden, this person that was on that cover came into my living room, and he sat down on my couch. And the first thing he asked me, and in very like a loud whisper, he said, "What is this, the thirsty whale?" I'm like, I laughed and said, I've never been there, but I've heard of it. He says, "Oh, I've been there quite a few times." And he was saying this in this British accent. I'm like, this is so cool, you know? And he started eating, and I'm watching him. And all of a sudden came over to me, and he had said to me, I was told not to come empty handed. I said, "Oh," he said, "Yeah." And he had this spiritual necklace, and he put it around my neck. And I looked at it, and it was actually like a blue, so it was like a sapphire blue diamond or something. I knew that shape. I knew the chain and everything. And I was like, I said to him, "I'll never take it off." And he said, "Well," he says, "I got to go now, but I'll see you again." He waved and he left out the window. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Wow, that's a heck of
this
a
is really,
vision.
that was a big vision. I admit it. And
Now,
I was like, hmm?
when you say that he was on the cover, who are you referring to?
Tommy,
Tom
Tommy
Evans.
Evans. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I just
Yes.
that's who I thought
And
so, but just for the
that,
listeners.
that's fine. And I called my friend because he's into the spiritual and the paranormal, and I told him about it. And he said, "I got to come over." I'm like, "Why?" He says, "I got to come over right now." So he came over, and he brought this book to me. And I didn't see the cover, but he said, "Page through the book." So I started paging through the book, and I saw pictures and photos. And I found a picture of Tommy wearing the same necklace he gave me, and was like, and my friend said, see, you got a connection going there."
Wow.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And my whole body was like in shock from this. And from that point on, decided, okay, I want to learn a little bit more about them. And I learned a tiny bit more. And then I had another vision. He came again. And we talked again, and he was telling me about how he was rooked by this man, by this manager. He was basically ranting at me, and I'm like, oh, what do I do? I'm thinking, what do I do? And he was looking for his friend in heaven, he said, Pete Ham. And he says, I have combed heaven every level. I can't find him. I said, maybe he's on the earth plane again. And he was like, he kind of shrugged and lowered his head. I said, "I'm really sorry." And said, "What should I call you? Should I call you Tommy or Tom?" He says, "It's up to you." I said, "Okay, I'll call you Tommy." And that's what I started calling him. And, you know, he and I started having little repertoire with each other. And again, he said, "I'll see you again." He left out the window again. So that was my second visit with him. Meanwhile, I'm in the group, and everybody's still hurting and everything. And I started to write down to the group, I said, you will always be in Tommy's heart. And I started getting likes and comments. They were all positive things. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm helping people. I'm actually helping them. And I decided to write another blurb, and it was a little bit longer of what they were doing in heaven. I still have the original blurb to it. and people were enjoying it so much. And there were people in there that I don't know how they got in there. And I said, there's got to be a backstory to this story. And I decided, okay, I'm going to write this backstory. And it had to do with my relationship in a way with this one soul who was Brian Jones. And I wrote in Sharon, and she was having adventures with Brian Jones. And then all of a sudden, I put the parallel story with Tommy coming to heaven. And I did it very tastefully. I think I did it tastefully, actually. And when I put him in the story, I felt Tommy behind me at by my computer. And he said to me, Joyce, he said, it's going to be a very boring story unless I meet somebody, because all I did was look for Pete. I didn't need anybody famous, but you got to put somebody in the story for me to make it interesting. So I asked him, I said, well, who do you want in the story? Because I was allowed to ask at that time. And he said, how about Janis Joplin? I said, is that who you want to meet? He said, yeah, let's put her in. So I went ahead and I put Janis Joplin in. And I asked him, I said, do you want anybody else special in there? He says, yeah, he says, why don't you put an angel in there that could be my spiritual guide? So I said, that sounds like a great idea. So he did that. And then he said to me, how about if, he says, I had the same house that I had on the earth plane in heaven. I said, well, I said, okay. He says, make me couch black. Make me a black leather couch. And I said, okay, fine. So we kept doing this. He kept telling me what was in heaven. And I kept putting it down. And from there, finally, we put in Victoria. You know Victoria now, because you read about Victoria. She's like a genteel, old, a 90-year-old British lady who's very much like the Queen in a way, the way she presents herself and what she likes. And he goes to her house and meets her, and they become good friends. And Tommy said to me, well, I want Victoria to knit me a sweater, and I want it to be purple. So I said, okay, we'll do this. So all along every day that I was writing, Tommy was feeding me this, feeding me that.
So
He
he was
said,
coming.
oh,
He was coming every day to visit you.
yes, he was coming I think it was almost every day, just to, when I was working on the story, but we had visits every week. At Tuesdays, 2:00, I started writing down all the visits. I was writing down another soul's information, and I started writing down the visits, and I couldn't believe it. And finally, it came to the point where I just was so engrossed in the story, and all of a sudden, the administrator of the site told me to cap the story because I had 528 comments on there, and I had to cap it, and I
That's
was
awesome.
very upset about it. I'm like, why do I have to cap it? It's his site, and he had his reasons. So I took it from my site, and nobody could find me except 2 people, and I wrote for them for 4 months. 4 months. And my friend who I wrote for, he found me a site, and he made me my own Wish You Were Here site. It wasn't called Wish You Were Here. We didn't even have a name for it. My friend who had the book, he said, why don't you call it Wish You Were Here? Because that's the name of their album, and he's looking for Pete, so Wish You Were Here is actually a very good thing. Now, I was writing in all the real names and everything at that time. I never thought about publishing it, honestly. I just thought, I'm doing something good. I'm helping people. That was my goal. And they were enjoying it. And next thing I know, people were yelling at me, publish it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I remember Tommy just kept saying, carry on, carry on. It's a good story. It's a good story. And he would say that to me. And I said, well, I don't know what to do, Tommy. He says, oh, you'll figure it out. Listen to your friends. And I sat on it for a whole year, actually. I didn't know what to do. And, and finally I decided, you know what? These people want a book in their hands. I'm going to give it to them. So I started looking for a editor, and I had it in an archaic writing format, unfortunately. And I was told by an editor, you have to turn this whole thing around. 800 pages. That's how much I wrote. 800. And I had to turn it around. And I was crying. I didn't know what to do. And I finally did it. And then they said to me, well, you can't have it in third person and first person. You're going to have to put it in either one POV or the other. So I had to turn it around again. And I turned it to Tommy, his vision, his POV. And that was it took me quite a few months to do this, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, I did talk to another editor, Dennis D. Rose, and he said, we can work on a payment and we can actually do some things on the phone as well. And I said, okay, but I went into the story before I even gave it to him 13 more times to pre-edit it. And we finally decided to do the editing and get it done. First, and then I had to get a cover. I had a beautiful cover for it. Beautiful, beautiful cover. And this cover had Tommy on the cover. And Pete he's on the stairs. And I had pre-orders, believe it or not, for this book. And then all of a sudden things stopped because I had so many dead people in there. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, there could be copyright issues. I need to know. And I tried to reach out to lawyers, and they would touch me pro bono. They would, if I paid for it, that's one thing, but it was so expensive. So I was crying. I was on the couch, and I said, Tommy came to me and said, you have to cut up cardboard. I said, why? He said, for all the books you're going to sell. I'm like, Tommy, it's all stopped. He says, don't worry about it. You're going to publish. I'm like, I thought he was crazy, and I thought I was crazy. And then he said, do me a favor. He said, cut up the cardboard that you have and get your frustrations out. Just cut it up. So I cut up that day 40 pieces of cardboard for books. So that would be 20 books right there. And 2 weeks later on LinkedIn, I found somebody that was in my group. I found out he was a lawyer. And I was like, I reached out to him and asked him and said, if you read my book and you give me permission to publish, I said, I'll give you a free book. He jumped on it and said, sure, deal. So I'm like, okay. So he gave me, I was like freaking out by this for a whole month because I gave him a month to read it. He came back to me and said, Joyce, he says, I read it. I don't see anything wrong. He says, publish it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can publish. And so I went ahead and I self-published the book. And I used that cardboard, believe it or not, for the books I sold. And more cardboard for more books.
That's awesome.
So Tommy was right. Tommy was right on that. And Tommy, even before I was going to publish, he said to me, let me take this off a second. This is really important. He said to me, you're going to be successful, he said, if you find this particular picture of me on the net at Disneyland. And I said to him, okay, I'll go look for it. And I started looking. I looked for about 4 hours and couldn't find anything. Next day, I'm like, grab my computer, just writing away. He says, I think you can find it. He says, if I'm wrong, he says, you're not going to publish, you're not going to publish, you're not going to be successful with it. And so I went ahead and looked another 2 hours, and lo and behold, I found the picture of him at Disneyland. It was true. And I'm wearing this shirt, my Disney shirt. He was wearing a Donald Duck hat, and he was smiling for the camera. And when I found that picture, I was like, really, I was giddy. I was like, wow, he really, he came through for me.
Mm-hmm.
There were other things that had happened that I found out from other people that knew him, that I had him, basically his behavior down. And also his favorite colors were black and purple. His favorite food was pizza that we put down early, I found out. And I found out other things about him that were just true.
That
And
kind of validated you
oh
talking to him.
yes, yeah, I've had other things validate talking to him. The other thing that I have validated talking to him is that I asked God, I said, is he in my life or is he supposed to be in my life? And that night I had a dream. And in the dream, Tommy came to me and he said, you're the writer of my story. I said, yes. He says, I want you to be in my shoes. I want you to do everything I do. I'm going to tell you what to do. So we went through the whole dream like that. And I woke up in the morning as the dream was ending to the song Baby Blue on the radio. And I was flabbergasted by this. Like, this was definitely something for me. And I asked my husband, I said, do you think it is? He said, yes, I think it is. They hardly play Badfinger on this station.
Right.
And I don't believe in coincidences either.
No.
So, no.
Well,
And that happened.
I think you come across portraying the main character's personality really well. I mean, I didn't know him obviously as a person, but I mean, he seems like he has a sense of humor, a real cool guy, but perhaps a little tortured, or I don't know what I'm looking for here is maybe just been through some hard times in his life.
He
Um,
suffered.
yeah. And
Yes.
has he shared any of that with you?
Yes, he has. He shared that to me in the beginning, and we started not talking about it at certain times because it was bringing up so much a heartache. And my friend told me, please don't bring things up. Let him bring things up and try to keep it neutral. And then we started doing that. And then he started just basically telling me things about me. And he has told me some things again about himself. I know he has. One thing that was a validation for me is that he actually was a mechanical engineer trainee. And he told me, he said to me, he says, Joyce, he says, if I stayed with that, he says, I'd be alive today. I'd have money, I'd be alive today. And then I read in a fanzine that he actually said that to somebody. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And there are other things. The thing with the pot, I got a pot from, how can I explain this? Somebody in the Badfinger circle, Tommy's cooking pot. And when I got it, I smelled it. I smelled cheese and pizza in it, and there's nothing in the pot. And I went to a concert when with Joey Mullen was there, and I asked him about the cooking pot. He says, oh, Tom came over and he cooked pizza for one in the pot, and then he left the pot. And I'm like, oh, no wonder why I smell this. There's no smell in the pot to my husband, nothing to my son at the time. So it was just really amazing. And when I'm down, he leaves me little spiritual lollipops. And I pick it up and I lick it and I can taste it. I can taste the flavor and everything. And when he holds my hand, I can feel the tingles. I feel tingles. Like right now, I'm putting my hand out to him, and he's holding my hand. He's right here with me right now. I can tell. I'm gonna say that Tommy was supposed to come to me back in '83. He finally told me, and I had derailed him with another soul. He said he was not supposed to be looking for his friend in heaven. But because I derailed him, he started on that search. And I would not have known Tommy from Adam at all, period. I wouldn't know his name or anything. So I think it's just very interesting. Um, I sort of forced him to go to visit his family because he hasn't seen his family in a long time, apparently. And I forced him to do that. And he has seen his family, and he told me, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And but now he's with me 24/7 right now. The reason why is because I'm I'm a hyper person, and I also go from one mood to another. Unfortunately, my creativity. Um, I'm very, how can I explain this? Not high strung, but I can feel a lot. I feel the world, and I can feel different things happening, like shifts and stuff like that. And he has to be there to help me because when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel like getting out of bed. So he pounds on my back, and I have enough of it, and I get up. Or he'll tell me to turn on my music to get up, or something like that. But he started staying with me, believe it or not, when I actually came down with it's called bronchitis sinusitis. And he came with me to the doctor's office, and I'm sitting there waiting for the doctor, and he kept going back and forth to see what the doctor's doing. And he came in to see me and said, oh, the doctor's just very late. He's going to be here in 15 minutes. As soon as he said that, I looked at my watch. 15 minutes later, the doctor came in. And then the doctor told me I had this bronchitis sinusitis, and I had to take an antibiotic. And I said, you can't, he said to me, you can't take your cholesterol medicine with it. I said, why? He says, you'll die. Literally die. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay. My head is sort of spinning, and I go home and I forget about not taking my cholesterol medicine. I went to take it, and Tommy took my hand away and said, no, 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 you can't take it. He says, I'm going to have to stand here, and I'm going to have to nurse you back to health. And I really believe that's from God.
Is he a
You
guardian?
know,
Is he your guardian angel
he's like a guardian
or
angel.
a
Yeah.
spirit guide?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's a spirit guide. He calls himself a spirit friend. He says, I'm like Casper the friendly ghost. That's what he says to me. And he makes me laugh. He says things to make me laugh. Sometimes it's my husband would be sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden Tommy would be talking to me, and he'd say something really funny, and I'd be ha 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 ha. My husband like, what's so funny? Like, oh, never mind, never mind.
What does the book mean to you, and how is your purpose, kind of like your life's journey, intertwined with Tommy's story? I mean, it seems like you guys, this is meant to be, this is a synchronicity that has happened between you and Tommy.
Well, I think it helps me because I'm helping other people, and I'm helping them with the unknown. And that's really important to me. And I want people to know that there's definitely an afterlife, and that was proven to me time and time again. I mean, with all the confirmations that I've actually received, I think that's like really, really important. And also, I think it helps people because they have lost loved ones. I think it also helps them, I guess, knowing that they're doing fine, they're doing all right. And people that are curious about like the rock stars and the famous people, that they're okay too, and they're doing things in heaven as well. And I think that's really basic importance to me. And plus it helps, I mean, I'm entertaining them. I'm I'm giving them hints of certain things that are happening. I mean, I had this one friend, I didn't want to tell her that I was in contact with Tommy. She told me. She said it to me. I was very shy in the beginning, and I didn't want to tell anybody I was in contact with him. I didn't, not at all. And she said to me, I bet Tommy's helping you write the story. I said, her name's Lori, and I said, I don't know. I guess if you say so. And just the confirmation started coming in, and I started becoming friends with certain people on Facebook, and I just felt like I could tell them certain things. And at first I told them little bits and pieces, but then I just sort of went out there and told them the truth. And I've lost one person because I told them the truth about Tommy's death, actually. I'm not going to get into it. It was a very complicated situation. Tommy told me about it, and it's not as clear cut as some people think it is. I will just say that. And there are hints in the book of that as well. I do hint it. If people get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. It's fine. But Tommy said to me, he said, you can't tell everybody about this. So I only told certain people, and I made that mistake telling one person, and I ended up ranting and raving at them because they told me some things that were not true. And I'm like, okay, you don't get me at all. I said, you just don't get me. That's okay. And Tommy said to me, he said, you know what? You should have got rid of this person a long time ago. And you didn't. Because I I'm the kind of person that wants to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really do. Even though I have these trust issues on certain things, I do trust in certain areas as well. So my personality is not black and white either. It's also in a gray area. So,
What are some of the
but
details surrounding his death? Maybe the stuff that you can share. I mean, like, he did commit suicide, correct?
that's, well, yeah, in a certain way, that's again his death was very complicated. That's all I'm going to say. I can't really go into it. I just know his death was very complicated. He told me certain things, and he said that at this point, he said, you can't really bring this up. And he told me why I I couldn't bring certain things up. So I'm not going to do that right there. I have to listen to what he says in this case. One thing I want to mention is for people is that with Tommy and our relationship, I mean, everything is pretty much, like I said, it's just sort of a gray area. Now, there are people out there that have this situation where they are talking to spirits and stuff like that. It's very important to get the confirmation. That's number one. Number two, if they turn on you, I would get rid of them. If they start telling you to do something you shouldn't do, they're gone. I've had one that started telling me something not to do that was not right, and I got rid of them fast in 3 days. Gone. So they know that I live by a certain rules here, and they have to follow those rules. This is my house, and they have to understand they are sort of guests here, and they cannot impede on what I'm doing. Now, not to say that I haven't been depressed and stuff like that. And like one time I was so really depressed, I said to myself, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. And I reached for some of my pills because I do take a sleeping pill at night. And I had the whole bottle. I was really desperate. Oh no, my cat just jumped me. Excuse me. I got a kitty on me. And all of a sudden, Tommy came to me and he said to me, he was standing right behind me, and he said in a very gruff voice, he said, Joyce, if you live through this, I'll be so angry with you. And I dropped the pills and I just went into my bedroom and I cried, but I didn't take them. I didn't take them. He in a sense saved my life. It's not the first time he saved my life. He saved my life another time too.
Why did
He
why
said,
did Tommy come to you? Why did he choose
"Mm,
you to write the book and to do this kind of stuff, this kind of work?
I think because I'm very open, that's probably it. Also, there's a spiritual phone, and my friend was asking me to, with another soul, to contact other spirits. And one, we were looking for Elvis, and we were trying to call up Elvis, and we couldn't find him. He didn't want to be found. And then my friend said, "Well, why don't you try Tom Evans?" I said, "Who?" And my friend said, "Well, he's from Badfinger." I said, "I only know Joey from Badfinger." He says, "Well," he says, "try him anyway." So a soul decided to call him up, and I did talk to him on the spiritual phone, but I had no idea he was going to come and visit me. No idea at all. And he liked me, I guess. He liked my personality. He says to me, "Joyce," he says, you don't understand. I see something in you don't see." He says, "I see your spiritual body." He says, "I think you're a good person." And I don't feel like a good person all the time. And I told him, like, I said, "I don't know. I got static and stuff in my mind and everything." And he says, "No," he says, "you're a good person." I'm like, okay, okay, you know.
It's wonderful.
So they see they see things we don't see. And I'm not trying to be egotistical. I'm just saying what he said, actually. That's what I'm saying. I would never ever, say something that different that he says.
Can we talk a little bit about the second book?
Sure. Okay, so in the second book, well, in the first book, basically what it is, it's about a rock star battling severe depression, failing to start his music career. He wants to be in heaven with his bandmate and friend, but he suddenly finds himself, I guess, alone in paradise. And this compels him to search for his mate. And in the search, he meets all these people, all these new people and famous new people. And it's a race against time to connect with him before he possibly returns back to Earth. Because he was afraid that he went back. And it's in the book, actually, as well. And in the second book, he see I don't want to give away everything, but
No, don't you don't have to give it away.
yeah.
Just maybe touch on some details or say something about just a little bit about the book.
Well, in the second
It's
book,
a continued of the journey,
it's
right?
a continuation of his journey. He does actually meet, in a way, he does meet Pete in the book, or Paul. I'll tell you the reason why we changed the names and everything soon. And something had happened, and he goes back on his search for him again. And he meets more people again, but he he finds different inventions in heaven. And he also, how can I explain this? He VCRs and things that he really wanted. Oh, great! There's my mail. And he really wanted time, and he's going to get time, believe it or not. But something's going to happen, but I don't want to give it away with what he does with this watch. It's really, really amazing what he does with it. And he also discovers a stone from Garden of Eden on a beach in heaven. And he wants to make it into some kind of necklace because he likes necklaces, I guess. He likes jewelry. And the jeweler says, we can't make this into a necklace because it can't be cut. And he wants to have it cut. He tells him it's from the Garden of Eden. And Tommy's like, "Well, this thing hurt me at first." He says, "Well, it hurt you, but when you picked it up," he said, it showed that you had no more fear of it, so it's yours." And Tommy finds out that this particular stone actually helps him on his search. It's like he can go to the lower levels without getting unbalanced, because in the first book, when he goes to the lower levels for a long time, he does get unbalanced. And that's something that people don't understand, that in his own lifetime, Tommy was probably manic depressive. He probably was. People don't, not everybody knows that. And it wasn't at that time a very acceptable diagnosis. You know, people didn't really understand it at that time in the 70s and the early 80s. There wasn't much, I guess, help for that. But I put it in there that he gets manic depressive on the lower levels. He goes from highs to lows and it's very interesting. And so he gets the stone, and it has its drawbacks, the stone, later on. And I'm not going to get into it because I want people to actually read the book. So it's very interesting what happens with the stone.
Excellent.
Very
Excellent.
interesting. Tommy, he told me to put it in there. I put the things in there, and he would look at it, and he'd say, keep it. And what he didn't like, he said, take it out. So there were things that we took out and things we kept. And the second, actually, when I wrote the first book, I was just writing all the way through, and I had to cut it, actually, because it was too long. And then people were saying to me, make it a film, make it a movie. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just made it a book.
You had mentioned to me earlier, though, there is a potential movie deal, right?
Yes, yes, there is. It's in there at Paramount right now with 10 other scripts in what they call a slate, and they're trying to get funding for the whole book bundle. And it could take anywhere from, they said, in November to early spring to get the bundle. Yes, and that's the reasons why I changed the names in the book and for the film, because the film and the book should coincide with each other. That was one of the reasons why we changed the names, because I can't get all the names for the copyrights or the permission for everybody. There's Janis Joplin in there. There's Cass Elliot. There's Andy Kaufman. There's John Belushi. I mean, the names go on and on and on, all these famous people. Lucille Ball, Frankie Lyman, Jim Morrison, Keith Moon.
Now, has he really been in contact with these people?
Keith Moon, I had contact, and was very, very strange. He's like a little kid. All he did was tap my brother and I on the shoulder and leave. That's what he did. One time he made my cat jump really high. He scared my cat to death, and my cat jumped. And he was in my life for, I don't know, in and out of my life for a little while, and that was it. But I've had experiences with 13 souls in my house, 13 at one time. And I knew the reason why I knew I got them is because my husband would call me on the phone and he'd say, Joyce, so-and-so died. Did you get him? I'd be like, wait a minute. Okay, I'll go check. So I looked on my couch and I saw Zali from the Loving Spoonfuls on my couch. And I saw what he was wearing. And I told my husband what he was wearing. And my husband said, yeah, you got him. Because he was wearing the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh. And that happened over and over and over again until I had 13 souls in the house. Some of them were popular, some of them were not, but they were there. And I think this was like a boot camp or a battleground for me, for what was to come next in my life. And I catered to these spirits for about a year. And I got to the point where my brother actually got to the point and said, you got to let them go because they'll burn you in the end. And I got scared. So I went and I prayed to God that they go where they belong. And most of them disappeared. I didn't know where they went to, but one came back, and he stayed with me. I still have him around. So he is my spiritual guide. So I do have a spiritual guide, but I don't see him as much. He prays a lot. And when he's praying, Tommy picks up the slack, basically. That's what happens. So there is another spirit in the house. And I've got enough confirmation on him. I know his girlfriend, and his girlfriend and I talked, and he told me some things, and she said, yeah, you got him, you know. But I think the thing is that I only get information that God wants me to get. I don't get everything. Because my husband asked me now, did you get Spencer Davis? I said, no, I didn't get Spencer Davis. Did you get this person that died? I said, no, I haven't gotten this person. I think because of all the spirits that I had in the house before, I think that God is having mercy on me because I really worked hard with them, very hard. And so I don't get everybody. The only one that I got for about 3 minutes was Prince in my square. I call it the square. Between my living room and my dining room, I saw him. And I heard other people had seen him as well before he was cremated. And Tommy was cremated, and so was Pete. But they were cremated without their knowledge. So they went to a higher level. And okay, so this is what I was told from some very spiritual people. They said that when people want to be cremated, they said that their souls go into limbo land. They cannot be reached. I'm like, oh my gosh. My husband's cousin, I tried to reach out to her for a month and could not after she passed away. And I said, I have a feeling she was cremated. And we found out a couple of weeks later she was cremated, and that's what she wanted. So I don't know whether that's
Why
so
is
much
that?
truth to it. Because it's like when you cremate yourself, it's like having $1 million and throwing it in the garbage, because your body is sacred. It's a very sacred thing, and and we're supposed to, like worms, and like we're supposed to sort of disintegrate in the ground. That's what we're supposed to do. So cremation, it's like taking your sacred body and throwing it away. You're burning it up. I mean, people in the Holocaust, they were burned and cremated, but they didn't have any choice in the matter. So this is something, and Tommy and Pete had no choice in the matter at all. So they went to higher levels. I knew another soul was cremated as well, and he went to a higher level because his wife did not want I guess because he was a famous person, so his wife did not want him, people parading around his grave and stuff like that. So she had him cremated. But he had no knowledge of it as well. So I don't know. This is just what was told to me, and this is what I've experienced for myself with some people that have been cremated.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Learned something new today.
Yeah. I think people should not cremate themselves, honestly. It's also, I think that people who cremate themselves, and if they die by mysterious deaths, later on, they can open a case,
right,
and see what happened. A person that's cremated, they can't open a case to see.
right. That's true.
It's done. It's totally done.
Well, Joyce, it's been a fascinating discussion. Um, where can we find the great work that you're doing, and when's the potential release of the new book?
Well, from what I know, the book should be out sometime, hopefully in November. I'm hoping. I will let you know exactly when the date will be. The movie I'm looking at, hopefully sometime in 2022 because it's going to take time. And the first book is out now on Amazon, and the audio book is going to be out on Amazon as well. The first book will be an
Yeah.
audio book, and it's coming along beautifully. The person's doing a great job. Tommy thinks he's really, really good at what he's doing, and I agree. I actually helped find him on LinkedIn, and I had a dream that I would find the right narrator, and I did. So
Yeah.
definitely.
The first book's definitely a page turner, and it even gives you kind of like a sense of wonder, opens up your mind to the potentials of what heaven could be like in the afterlife. It's very, very interesting book. Please, guys, if you get a chance, check her book out. It's a good read. And so,
Also, you can join my newsletter too, my newsletter as well. And what you would get with the newsletter is you would get my rock dreams. What it is, it's a virtual PDF file, and it has all my drawings from 1979 all the way to 2015. And they're all rock stars, and there's tidbits about them, and they're really good drawings. They're unbelievable. So when you join my newsletter, you'll get that for free, and you'll learn more about Badfinger and the paranormal, and when the book will come out. And I have little bits about that as well. So yeah, and Tommy, and I also have in there some of Tommy's visits. If people really want that, they let me know. They can reach me at SharonJ0023@yahoo.com if they're interested in the newsletter. I'm sure you'll put the link down there on your thing and everything. And I'll have the second cover for you as well. So,
excellent. Hey, thanks again for coming on the show.
oh, you're welcome. I'm glad.